Letter 5 of Letters from Hell. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Marie Christian. Letters from Hell by Valdemar Adolph Thisted. Translated by LWJS. Letter 5. I begin to feel at home here. At home? How full of sweetest echoes is this word. Its very sound would warm one's heart on earth. It is bitter here, doubly bitter for memories gone. It does not lessen hell to get used to it. We are even forced to make ourselves at home here, just as we are obliged to be what once we were. That irresistible impulse to be continuously doing the works of our earthly life, to pursue with a burning greed a vain and shadowy existence, may well be termed hell's daily bread. The evil desire alone is real. The sense that might lend it expression is dead. You have heard of Tantalus and Sisyphus. It may help you to conceive our state. All is illusion here, the very fire I told you of, raging in imagination merely, within us, that is. And yet what an awful reality. You understand then that I have resumed old habits, not willingly, but under compulsion, following the old bent with a helpless disgust. However, I cannot but add that I have been tolerably fortunate, falling on my feet in society, as it were, and a very nice set I have joined. I have been lucky in renewing many old acquaintance, and have made friends with people whom one would have been glad to know on earth. You would be indeed surprised if I were indiscreet enough to mention names. But I shall content myself with generalizing. It is strange how many of the so-called respectable people one meets here. In fact, they form the nucleus of society in hell, as they do on earth. I might even say good people, meaning those worthy folk whose one desire is to go through life comfortably, quite willing no one else should hunger, provided they themselves have all they need. Satisfied with their lot in the world, not perhaps a grand one, and caring for nothing beyond it, never dreaming that the less fortunate might be their brothers and sisters after all. Just look about you wherever you please. The world is full of such. They are good to themselves and good to their children, thanking God for the means of being so. They spend their years as if this life's business were all that needs to be thought of, living for their families, their home concerns, whether in drudgery or in ease, both men and women. You little think that daily life, with its legitimate cares, even what you call your duty by house and home, may be the snare to bring your soul to hell. There are men who rush through life in the whirl of amusement. Others sleep through it. Others again wear themselves out for its paltry amenities, calling that to live forsooth. And before they are aware of it, their race is run. They close their eyes to open them again, surprised perhaps, in the pangs of hell. Oh, could I live over again but a single year of my earthly span! I do not mean for my own sake merely. I might perhaps be able to warn some few of those excellent men whose ideas of life are wrapped up in the counting house on the one hand, and in the prosperity of their family on the other, of those devoted wives and mothers who spend themselves for the comforts of home. I say some few of them, well knowing that not many would believe me. Nay, even as regards so-called philanthropists, I have made the unexpected discovery that some of them, I say some, who have really one way or another benefited thousands, have lived to their own ruin. Has the world been loud in their praises? Learn wisdom, my friend, and overrate not the world's approval. It is indeed a strange fancy, prevalent among men, that only the wicked go to hell. You poor deluded ones, listen to my words. It is incredible, I assure you, how little is needed to take a man to hell. That is to say, if he dies without having found his Savior. For without him the soul is unable to bear the smallest weight of wrong, while with him, yes, with him, she will wing herself to heaven in the face of mountains of sin. Do you know that Savior? I ask you as one who can never know him now. There are many here, I assure you, who have never committed any particular crime. The world, with its notions of right and wrong, would cry out for justice if it were but known. And why are they here? They never felt the sting of conscience, leading respectable lives, laying the unction of goodness to their souls. But they died and went to hell. No demon of evil ruled their lives, and yet they are here. O heaven, where is thy justice? In a like damnation with ourselves. The torment of hell for such people consists in having nothing to do here, no counting house to attend, no families to provide for. Not ruled by passion, they are slaves to life's habit, and the latter may be as terrible a taskmaster as the former. Thus much is certain. If having nothing to live for could kill people, and if one could die in hell, many here would die of sheer hankering after their earthly drudgery. My own existence, once I was properly introduced, was speedily filled with amusement. Are you surprised that I should say introduced? But we are no Goths here, and society with us also attends to its rules. If it needs little to bring one to hell, it is not so easy to make one's way into the fashionable circles of this place of woe. It is with us just as with you, with this difference only. The world asks who a man is, the question here being who he was. Now I, in the world, was allowed to be handsome and refined, a man who could pride himself on his gentlemanly qualities, not to mention a considerable fortune. Here I am no longer this man, but I affect his semblance. Yet I must warn you against imagining that there is any pretense. No, it is nature, downright nature. At first I was positively overwhelmed with calls and invitations. Here also novelty is much sought after. If I had brought nothing with me but the news of some foolish fashion lately adopted in the world, I should have been considered an acquisition. But without flattering myself, I may say I brought more, a fashionable finish of the most faultless description having ever been the very essence of my aims. Shall I tell you of a merry club dinner to which I was asked lately? The party assembled was of doubtful reputation. High living, drink, and gluttony seemed their watchword. Nor was it complimentary to my antecedents to be invited, for with me the beautiful maxim, moderation in all things, had ever covered a multitude of sins, and I had always been careful to avoid vulgarity. However, there I was. The fare was exquisite, the wine splendid. A jovial company they appeared, to judge from the loose jokes and ribald anecdotes passing between the pleasures of the table. And what shall I say of the temptations born of surfeit, coursing through the heated veins? Ah, they were not wanting, but satisfaction was an illusion. I refrain. There was nothing real in all that banquet, save its incitement to sin. We preyed on our miserable selves, eating and drinking, leaving a nauseating feeling of emptiness, the very jokes being unbearably stale. Men of all kinds are found here, but vainly you look for one capable of producing anything to refresh the mind by genuine mirth or novelty. However, eat and drink we must, and laugh and joke we must. We were obliged, whether we liked it or not. Now you understand, perhaps, though faintly, what it means to join in festivity in hell. At that club dinner, where nothing was wanting that gluttony could dream of, the thought of some poor man on earth eating his crust in the sweat of his brow, again and again presented itself to my mind. The dry bread that satisfies his hunger, the beer or tea that quenches his thirst, what a royal feast is his as compared with ourselves. For he does eat and is satisfied, but we, O vainest deception! Was it not that excellent hero Achilles who in Hades exclaimed mournfully, he would rather be the most miserable man on earth than king of the realm below? This is but wisdom of the Greeks, but how true, how true! I too would far rather spend my days upon earth amid the most overwhelming difficulties, battling with care, want, or suffering, than occupy any favored position here, be it of king or epicure. Of all the fools of the world's training, he surely is greatest who takes away his own life, thinking that he could never be worse off than he is. In sooth, whatever a man's earthly lot may be sure it may be a paradise to what he goes to meet. He may find himself yearning for the misery he quitted. Indeed, if you could give him back that misery tenfold, he would seize it eagerly and bless you for the gift. Still, the number of actual suicides, comparatively speaking, is small. A far larger class of men content themselves with shortening their days by continuous grumblings and a dismal, unsatisfied frame of mind. If shortening their days were but all, and if thereby they did at least better themselves for the time being. But the fact is, they all but kill life with discontent. They are dissatisfied with themselves, with their fellows, with all the world, with the very air which they breathe, and the day which is given them. Poor fools, the day is short and night is at hand. And why are they dissatisfied? Because health is not all it should be, or the world at times crosses them. Because their position in life but imperfectly suits their nature and liking, and they would desire a better lot. Because perhaps their battle is harder than other people's, or at worst their whole life a failure falling short of dearest hope. I do not mean to underrate these things. On the contrary, I do own that life to most men is fraught with sorrow. But I say this, could you but view matters from the vantage ground of hell, you would lessen life by discontent, you would gain that much of wisdom, that our days on earth, whatever of trouble, of care and vexation be bound up with them, are yet capable of yielding very real happiness. So much depends on how we take things. If instead of fixing upon trouble as something foreign to yourselves or hostile to your being, looking upon yourselves as miserable in consequence, you could but open your soul to that trouble and rising from inertness, accept it as a very part of your existence, how different things would appear. Many a trouble, moreover, is but imaginary, and if dealt with sensibly would dwindle away, while many a real trouble, on the other hand, by your striving to take it aright, might become an impulse of new endeavor, changing the very face of your life and leading you to a better happiness than before you aimed at. Ah, indeed, if you could but view matters from hell, you would come to see that man is able to bear a load of trouble, and that, confronting want and misery, he may yet attain a state of happiness worth the having. You would find that every day of that life, which now you make a burden to yourselves and to others, is precious beyond words, a gracious gift of God for which you cannot be grateful enough. You would understand that I, hungering and longing, would wish to be in your place, and count myself blessed to bear the burden which you consider so grievous. But what boots it that I see it all so plainly now? It is too late for me, too late. That fashionable people in hell have their so-called grand evening parties will hardly surprise you. We have dances, at homes, and all those things set store by in the world. But if this sort of stylish living, even on earth, is unutterably hollow, what must it be here where the very air we breathe is vanity and nothingness? Looking back, I can scarcely credit now how I could wrong my better self for the sake of that vile habit of attending parties. What is a party in the very society which calls itself polite? Is it not as if some vicious goblin had a hand in it, bringing together 20, 50, even 100 people, each of whom has his own cozy fireside. Men and women who for the most part have little or nothing in common. But needs must be met beneath staring chandeliers, the spirit of falsehood among them. Vanity rules, and when the goblin has thoroughly fooled them and lights turn pale, they each go home fagged and tattered. Host and hostess say, "What a mercy it's over." Each visitor says, "I am thankful to go to bed." Are you, poor fools of fashion? But if it seems a marvel now how I also, in days gone by, could sacrifice myself to the so-called claims of society, I need not marvel that I do so here. It was by choice then. It is under compulsion now. It is as if 10,000 goblins fooled us. We know it, but cannot withstand. The object of parties with us is just the same as with you. To be seen, to be admired, to make oneself agreeable. Not so much in order to please your neighbor as to be thought pleasant yourself, and to hide it amiably if you think people a bore. There is one marked difference, however, placing us often in a position both painful and ridiculous. What should you say if at any of your great social gatherings you could look through people's clothes, those fine clothes put on so carefully, through them, I say, to the very piece of humanity they hide, and not only through them, but deeper still to the core of the heart beneath? It is so here. Supposing then you walk up to some old crone, saying with your most engaging smile, "Delighted to see you," thinking to yourself at the same time, "I wish she were at Jericho." I leave you to imagine the figure you cut. I give this as an example only, as a clue rather. Think it out further and see where it leaves you. But even to this one gets used in hell, fortifying oneself with a kind of frivolous impudence, without which intercourse would be simply unbearable. The incident I quoted, of course, leaves the advantage with the old crone. But the moment she opens her lips, her interlocutor has the best of it, for he can see through her clothes as she saw through his. They are quits then. However, as I said, it is not merely ludicrous but painful, offering, moreover, an unsurmountable obstacle to all courtship. It is utterly impossible here to fool a woman, be she ever so frail. All the fine words of hell cannot delude her, for she sees through them. From this point of view, we form a most virtuous company. Indeed, flattery and compliments with us are exceedingly difficult to pass, the heart betraying the man in quite another sense than with you. You can hardly picture to yourself how much of the truly surprising, if not interesting, may be experienced here in a single day. The world, as seen from hell, is the land of dreams and imaginings, appearing beautiful and pleasant none the less. And absurdly paradoxical as it may sound, here only, where all reality has vanished, reality in uncompromising nakedness is upon us. Are they friends or foes that meet, they soon speak the truth to one another. Such mutual confessions, on the whole, are little edifying, and since there are no secrets here, at once flit from circle to circle for general merriment. Do you care to have examples? Here are some recent titbits. A had been killed in a duel which he fought to avenge an insult offered to his handsome young wife. Quite recently, he somewhat unexpectedly met his late opponent, who, having gone the way of all flesh, had come to hell. Wrathfully he taxed him with former wrong, but the latter made answer quite coolly. "Silly man, do you mean to fight me again for nothing whatever? Let bygones be bygones. We had better be friends." "For nothing whatever?" reiterated A hotly. "Do you call it nothing that you insulted my wife and killed me moreover when I tried to vindicate her?" "I suppose I must tell you the plain fact," replied his opponent. "I see you still labor under a delusion. The matter was simply this. I had been the lover of your wife, but broke with her. That was the insult. That is why she got you to challenge me. However, these are bygones. We'll be friends now." Whether they were friends after that, I cannot tell. I rather think A felt ready to hide himself. Two friends, in fact they were cousins, sat together in pleasant intercourse. Said the one, "To tell the truth, I was born to be a poet. I did write novels, and my first publications made quite a sensation." "Don't I know that?" says the cousin, "since it was I who wrote half the reviews about them. It was I, sweet coz, who brought you into fashion. That is easily managed if one has a few connections and sufficient wit to let the reviews be racy. People are easily caught." "What? You? Surely you are but joking." "Why, I owe you everlasting thanks." "Thanks? No," replied the cousin. "Did we not love one another as very brothers?" The would-be poet grew thoughtful, continuing after a while. "But it was short-lived fame. I had jumped into fashion with one leap, as it were, and a great future seemed to await me, when, as by magic, there was a change which I never understood. Reviews from panegyrics turned to spite, cutting me up so mercilessly that no publisher presently had courage to launch my works, and I was constrained to turn my back upon the literary career." "Well, I can solve that mystery also. It was I who cut you up so mercilessly, as you say, not leaving you the faintest pretense to talent. I had set myself to persecute you into silence. As soon as you opened your mouth, down came the lash. What could you do but turn your back on literature?" "You? You did that?" "To be sure, but don't excite yourself. It was to your own advantage. Your mother, to whom I never could say nay, had implored me to leave no stone unturned in trying to save you from what she considered your utter ruin. You had no talent for poetry, she said, but a very marked calling for the blacking manufactory, on which your family had thriven conspicuously. Now, I knew, of course I did, that your literary fame was all humbug, and humbug could not really hold you in the saddle. I saw that. A reviewer could fill your balloon, but he could not keep it sailing, and with every line you wrote, the gas escaped woefully. You were as near a collapse as possible. So I generously resolved to anticipate it, and by main force bring you from poetry to blacking. I discharged broadsides of wit and volleys of sarcasm whenever you dared to show yourself in print, success crowning my efforts. For you died rich with the spoils of blacking, a man of worth, too, in the eyes of respectable citizens. "And went to hell," cried the blacking and posy monger. "Should I find myself here if my Pegasus had not been hamstrung so vilely?" "That is more than I know," returned the reviewing cousin mildly. "But I scarcely think that literature by itself would have carried you to paradise, any more than I believe that blacking alone had power to drag you to hell. But these are bygones. I loved you dearly, and was your best friend after all." The poetical blacking dealer turned away disgusted. The information was more than he could stand. A couple of monks were holding low but earnest converse. "But tell me, brother," said the one, "how you came to take the cowl." "Through my own stupidity. It was nothing else. I fell in love with Lizella Neary. You knew her, I think. She was considered a beauty, and she was an heiress. However, I was refused, and sick of life, I entered the monastery. A piece of folly I rued every day till I died. A simple story, is it not? But what brought you to the cloister?" "The very opposite, strange to say. I also loved Lizella, and presently was her accepted suitor, but it ended in my being the most miserable husband under the sun. Lizella was both capricious and bad, and she did not care for me. I never knew a moment's peace. There seemed but one way out of misery. Leaving her mistress of her fortune, I fled to the monastery, and truly I never repented of it. If ever a moment's discontent assailed me, I had but to think of Lizella, and happiness was restored." The first monk sat buried in silence. Presently he said, "Our experience shows that no one can escape his destiny." From what you tell me, I gather that Lucella, one way or another, must have brought me to the cowl. Still, you, brother, were the most fortunate of all, not because for a time you owned that handsome troubler of peace, but because, knowing her as I did not, your disappointment ended in content. But enough of this. What is the use of telling these things? Martin, poor Martin, what may have become of you? He was wronged after all, badly brought up, badly used. He was my work. She was very beautiful, that young girl, about his own age. She was cleaning the house steps one day when I first saw her. But lowly as her occupation was, she charmed the eye. The demon was moved. It was easy for me to offer to educate her. She appeared not born to her humble sphere. I placed her with a family I knew. Simple as she was, she appeared to understand I had some object. But the flower should unfold before I plucked it. I had learned to wait. By what chance he and she met, I know not, but their first meeting seems to have been sufficient. As in a flash of lightning, love struck their hearts simultaneously, and quickly they knew that they were each other's. Martin came to me with an open confession. But not only did I refuse consent, I cruelly taunted him, defrauded as I felt. He quitted me in anger to seek his own way. As self-willed as myself, he hesitated not a moment as to his line of action, carrying off the girl before my very eyes, so to speak. She was nowhere to be found. But he did not hide, facing me boldly. It was then that I thrust him from my house. From my heart also I believed, but in this I was mistaken. What could he have been wanting to tell me that would heal every breach between us, as he said in that letter? Did it concern him or her? A higher power has spoken, he said. I am left to maddening doubt. Doubt? Nay, it is a burning question, consuming my soul with the fire of hell, sufficient almost to draw me back to earth as a wandering ghost. But should I find an answer to the question? And where? End of letter 5.